First of all, how are you?
I'm fine. And how are you? You look good.
Cyrille, it's wonderful to see you. Yeah, I'm in Singapore. I came here from the UK, so I had to do 14 days of mandatory quarantine. I got out for one day and then just in enough time to buy some food and some toilet paper. And then they enacted a 1-month lockdown, which they've now extended for another month. So I'll be here until the 1st of June. But anyway, it's for the best. We all have to, do our part and try to make sure that all the healthcare systems in every country in the world are not overwhelmed. And so I'm very happy to sit in my house.
Yes.
What part of the world are you in, sir?
I'm in Geneva.
Okay.
And so I've been there, say, in confinement for it's the 6th week in a row. So I find I wanted it to be locked down, but I would say now the Switzerland lockdown is rather mild, meaning you can go to office if you wish, as far as you keep social distance. You are allowed to go for a walk or jogging outside. So as far as people stay alone or 2 or 3, less than 5, it's quite moderate. And the health system is handling quite well. The hospitals are not saturated. The epidemic is under kind of control. So it's getting out of confinement next week, gradually and until mid-June. But things seems to be pretty well under control here, so it's fine.
I'm very glad to hear that.
And there's beautiful spring, so because there are no cars, no pollution, so you have blue skies. It's a kind of unknown periods.
It's quite charming in certain ways without dismissing what's going on. But I think today is Earth Day, and they were showing on CNN all the sort of wild animals are now kind of roaming all over. There's bears are walking through the woods. There's actually lions lying in the street. So.
In Paris, there were some photos with deers in the streets or kind of wild birds coming and taking back ownership of the city. It's a very, very strange period.
Incredible. I think about it, and I guess 2 of the watches that we'll be discussing today were actually born in the 30s, the Asymmetric and the Pasha. And I guess the 30s was also a time of political, economic uncertainty as well. I think especially towards the late 30s, we were heading towards one of the major conflicts. And so what I've always admired about Cartier is it almost seems to use creativity and beauty as the way to sort of combat against things when things get dark. Would you agree?
I fully agree with that. Cartier has been existing as a brand since 1847, and so has gone through many turbulences, we say, whether there were wars or economic depressions, periods of ups and downs, but have continued to have a continuous style. And that's where also now with the Cartier collection and tradition with the jewelry or watches, they are usually used by museums when they want to show the continuity of style in the 20th century, because Cartier never stopped. And try to continuously use this either encounters or surprise or good times or bad times to develop creativity and style, and in many different ways. So what has come out of that in some ways kind of truly timeless designs. So at some point, it doesn't mean that they age well. They don't age at all. When you take Asymmetric, you can say it was made in the 1930s. You could have made in earlier or later. It doesn't really matter. When we show the customers the Justin Clou, they said, when did you do that? Well, it was designed in 1969. And say, really? And for most watches or jewelry, you just cannot date them. And that's a part of this kind of a characterized Cartier style, is to be truly out of time. So it's always contemporary in some ways, always relevant to modern times. And the Asymmetric is as beautiful today as it was 80 years ago. So it's wonderful.
Amazing. Let's start with the Asymmetric. This is from the perspective of collectors around the world. I think there was a collective gasp of happiness when they realized that this watch was being reproduced. Launched in 1936, initially with the name the parallelogram, but then became known as the Asymmetric. It was a watch that was created with a case that was sort of skewed in one way, so that and worn in a certain sort of orientation, so it was easy to read when you were driving, for example.
Yes.
But then it became really a style icon. You've relaunched it this year in both a skeletonized format and in a format that is quite similar to the original, but in slightly larger sizes. Tell us when you felt it was really time to bring back the Asymmetric.
So as you know, in the recent kind of a repositioning of the Cartier brand, there have been many things, and say, let's first celebrate our icons, but also let's celebrate the beauty of style wherever it comes from. And for that, having a strong respect for what has been done in the past, but also how to make some modern version as well. And so there was the tank cintré, which came back, and the tonneau. And so it was, yes. And these are all-time classic. And I say it was time to bring another one, which is the Asymmetric. So it comes part of this family. There was also, some questions a few years ago. Say, there was a notion called Cartier privé with all the beautiful shapes that had been done, because Cartier was known to be the horlogerie of la forme, horlogerie of shapes, not only of round watches, with known for the movement inside, but really beautiful shape design. So after the Cintré and Tonneau, we thought it was the right time to bring the Asymmetric, and seeing how welcome it is, we know it was right.
Absolutely fantastic. So gentlemen and ladies, if you're reading this or watching this, please take note that of the different metals that are being created. They're only being made in yellow gold, red gold, and in platinum in 100 pieces each. So I would suggest that if you are interested, I'm quite certain that they will go quickly. So please express your interest to your local Cartier representative.
Oh yes, they will go very, very fast, because the other ones we had, the Cintré and Tonneau, have gone very quickly.
Wonderful. Well, part of the language of the Asymmetric, I think, are these beautiful Arabic numerals, which, is a nice contrast also from the Roman numerals that we normally associate with the maison. And there's such a beautiful use of this. This is a very beautiful yellow version of the 100-piece limited edition. But the skeletonized version also using an in-house movement with this beautiful architecture where the 12 is in some ways framing the barrel, and the 6 in some ways framing the balance wheel, is also an absolutely stunning watch, and a great merger between the historic iconography and the modern world of Cartier.
I fully agree. And when it came to a complication movement, I also thought that what characterizes Cartier is that technique should support the design. It should be embracing it. It should be part of it, so that when we see even the skeleton movement, it's a piece of art by itself. And it comes, in this case, in the Asymmetric in a very natural way. So that's one part of it, to see how, for us, technicality is only a support to a design. Of course, there are some watchmakers who were born in watchmaking and movement, and are really, really inventing many things in the beauty of movement. But we think what characterizes Cartier is both beautiful movement comes in beautiful cases, and the result of the two should be in a hybrid form that should be even nicer. That's one part. The second part is how to respect the past without being in some way prisoner of the past. So that's why when we come to a reedition, there's a lot of humility and say, when a shape is beautiful and perfect, what can you do with it? But the first part is say, can you make a reedition that would be as beautiful, but adapted to kind of modern perception of what is the perfect shape today? People used to wear watches that were smaller. And there was some piece of the tank Asymmetric in the past, or Santos Dumont, where it was much, much smaller on the wrist. And now it's perfect for a female size watch. But men now wear something a little bigger. So there was a need to make it slightly bigger, but respecting the same proportion. Then with the skeleton movement that were not existing at that time, how can we use that? So how can we use that shape today to make something absolutely new that would be absolutely respectful of this past? We have again in art, we tend to value the originality of creation. But the history of art has been a constant reinvention of past pieces, whether in paintings or in music. So in paintings, there are the beautiful Picasso series when he reinterpreted Velázquez Las Meninas, or on the Déjeuner sur l'herbe of Manet. There have been beautiful reinterpretation of Bach from Liszt, and there have been beautiful interpretation of Liszt from Paganini, and there have been interpretation of Liszt by Horowitz, and each of them take the piece as it is, reinterpret in depth, and add something. And so you have this kind of a dual signature when you have the Hungarian Rhapsody by Liszt, Horowitz version, or when you have a Prelude from Bach on the Liszt version for piano, because you need to have in mind that when Bach created, piano didn't exist. So it has to be transcripted for what looks so natural now. So when our own designers look at that in the past, they say how to have respect for the origin of the creation, to look at this beautiful as it is and as it was, but how to reinterpret in a modern way that is absolutely respectful, but absolutely new as well. Or it's a kind of, when you have a jazz classic, when you say summertime, it's very difficult to make the 150th interpretation of summertime that would look nice and not look than anyone else. And that's the part of it. It needs a lot of creativity to do that. But that's something we're so proud of the studio designers who can do that, I think, so well. It looks absolutely close to the original Asymmetric, and it's absolutely new.
I love the fact that it brings a little this dynamic energy also to have it in this size, 47.15 times 26.2, which from absolute terms sounds rather large, but that's because also of the shape of the case as well. But it is a little bit larger than, for example,
yes.
the watch from 1996 that was a CPCP watch that was issued, and which incidentally is selling for a very large premium nowadays as well, which is good to see. Let's transition from that to a family of 4 watches, which I think may be just the most breathtaking watches that we'll see this year. They are absolutely stunning. Based on a watch that was created in 1904, the very first wristwatch for a gentleman, the Santos. And I love how you come with a new range of Santos Dumont watches, each one bestowed with the name from one of his famous aircraft as well.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about this project? Because I think these watches are just amazing.
So it was a few years ago when we also wanted to review and to relaunch the Santos family. And Santos had been there for quite some time as a model. There were many versions. So first we started with the Santos steel version, still on steel. But then one of the beautiful member of the family was the Santos Dumont. And so last year we launched it again with a rework on shapes and size, and it was very well welcomed. So, but there was some question to say, but can't you make a model a bit larger? And also, why don't put a mechanical movement inside?
Of course.
Also, why having some kind of a more specific design that would kind of stretch a little bit the beauty of it? And that's where the project for this year came. First, making an extra large model that would be fitting those who have a larger wrist or would have a kind of a watch of a larger size with mechanical movement inside for the connoisseur who prefer a mechanical movement to a quartz movement. Even if you think the beauty of the watch is the same. But anyway, when you want to know also the beauty of what's inside, there was a need to do that. And then also to review the different experience that Santos Dumont had with La Demoiselle or with these aeroplanes or different aircrafts. Then we made a series of specific limited edition watches, and so that's where it is. And Santos Dumont is a beautiful family. It's one of the most iconic watch. I say Santos Dumont about 25 years ago was much smaller. So as a story, I had a quiet one for myself. And at some point, my wife said, "But this is the perfect size for me." And now she's wearing it, and now my daughter is stealing to her. And so I had to have another Santos Dumont a bit bigger than this one. So now I'm wearing a lot. This my version, the larger one, and so my wife is wearing the one of the 1980s, and in fact my wife and daughters are jointly wearing it. So the merit of having a timeless design is that it can be transmitted in the family and it's suitable for men and for women and for mature women and as a young women too. So it's a perfect, stylish, classic watch for all generation and all people.
Amazing.
And for the love mechanical movement, their version this year has it.
Fantastic. This is a watch that, so this is named Le Bracelet. It's named after one of the aircrafts that Santos Dumont would pilot. And for each of these watches, there's actually a very beautiful drawing on the back or engraving on the back of the watch. That is a sort of stylized depiction of that aircraft. So this is the platinum Le Bracelet that's going to be made in 100 pieces.
Yes.
And I want to just show each of these watches as well because I think they're so beautiful. And then so then there's also the La Baladeuse, which is a yellow gold watch, which will be made in 300 pieces as well. All these are 43.5 by 31.4, which I think is an amazing size. So, okay, so this is Le Bracelet, and this is so cool. You know, I'm going to assume this is like a hot air balloon, basically, but it's such a beautifully and sort of stylish way of depicting something that is so rooted to this whole, the beginning, the birth of the 20th century, you know, and how you were saying, Cyrille, that when you go to museums, you often sometimes see Cartier jewelry and watches shown to demonstrate what was going on in the world and how they are rooted as expressions of human culture. And I love this pioneering spirit of just the first exploration into air travel is incredible, you know, and for you to have this association, creating the watch for this amazing man is also amazing. Let's go to the next one, Sumit.
And even to comment on this one, where the Le Bracelet, when you see this drawing in the back, which was, of course, of the air balloon, but it also reminds of the Brazilian architecture of the 20th century. When you say Brasilia and the architecture of Oscar Niemeyer, you have this kind of shapes also. These kind of shapes were really in people's mind to design even buildings at that time.
Amazing. That's incredible. And there's so much synergy across all these different platforms in terms of air.
Well, and 2 years ago, there was in London an exhibition in the Museum of Design, which had been curated by Sir Norman Foster, called the Cartier in Motion, about Santos. And he had made this parallel also with the Santos dial and the map of Paris, and how the architecture of Haussmann, who has created some very architectural and geometric shapes inside Paris, in fact, comes back also a source of inspiration for the Santos dial.
That's incredible.
Architecture and watch stylists in some way come to mutual inspirations. That's amazing.
That is amazing. Okay, so we've seen La Balladeuse. I want to show, yes, okay. And this is, of course, like a form of a Zeppelin from what I can see. Another,
yes.
sort of that's also, I just love the sort of minimalist way in which you've rendered these, all paying such interesting attention to sort of these geometric forms. It's really stunning. And then let's show, if you don't mind, the bimetallic one, which is number 14 or 14 bis. And this will be made in 500 pieces with a steel and gold bezel, but also a really cool watch. And all of these, again, are 43.5 by 31.4. I say this also because there's a fourth piece that's slightly larger and is also a watch that's captured my heart. But okay, so this is incredible too. I love this.
It looks so modern.
So modern. It's incredible,
So at the same time, it looks like a toy, but if you think it's a building, it will be absolutely stunning and modern.
Okay, so this is for 14 bis, which is also a stunning watch. Guys, also remember that all these have the Cartier in-house 430 MC manual wine movement. We have to transition to, I think, the watch that has already captured so many people's hearts. And now let's go, if you don't mind, to La Demoiselle, which is absolutely ravishing. I mean, this is the watch that I think people will actually be fighting each other to own. It is a platinum case watch in 46.6 by 33.9. It is also with the 4030 MC manual wine movement, but it has a very, very special sort of pattern on the dial, which is inspired by the Panama hat that Santos Dumont used to wear. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely correct.
That's amazing.
So stylish.
It's so cool. And I love this use of this combination of ivory and burgundy as well, which I know is one of your signatures, but somehow it makes it simultaneously, it's such a cool dynamic tension between kind of classicism and vintageness, but it's so modern at the same time.
And I like that you use the word dynamic tensions, because it's a word we constantly use, because Cartier has tension between something which is masculine and feminine, square and round, hard and soft at the same time. And when this balance is well made, it's something just stunning. The dynamic tension is perfectly it. You got it right.
Oh, thank you very much. I usually use that to describe wine, because I always find the most interesting wine is a tension between fruit and acidity. So like Coche du Riz, for example, it's like this crazy tension.
Oh, I love Coche du Riz. The morceau from Coche du Riz, or it's Raché en Seigneur, or Bâtard Montrachet from Coche du Riz. I can die for it. I have a few things even in confinement you can enjoy, so that's great.
Excellent. There is also the beautiful Demoiselle comes on a second strap as well, which is okay. So let's take a look at the aircraft that's engraved into the back of the Demoiselle. That is amazing. Absolutely cool. And then you've got the image of the watch on there. There's a beautiful woven strap that it's also inspired by the Panama hat as well.
Yes.
It's absolutely incredible. Aha.
Yes.
I love that. That's so chic. And I think there's just 30 of these watches.
Well, in image, a warm climate like Singapore, you can imagine that wearing a Panama hat and going that out on the street, and will look like a cool, stylish elegance.
Absolutely. I love it. It's absolutely ravishing. You know what? I actually have my Panama hat right here. So
here you are.
Okay, so let's go from there to Okay. I think we need to also talk about this really cool watch because, as you were saying, that you are not prisoners of the past, and you always try to take your icons and give them sort of the entertaining connection to the modern world. And I love this Santos de Cartier watch. On well, it comes on the strap, but also on this incredible iconic Santos bracelet. But that's done in a black ADLC version, as well as a steel version as well. And I love this because, and at one point, it's very surprising because it's a Cartier Santos, which is a very elegant watch, but then it's got this kind of like dark and sort of slightly sinister sexiness to it as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, Cyrille.
Yeah. No, as we said, it's the same thing. So being, respectful of the past, and this is when you see it, there is no doubt it's really the Santos, but sometimes this kind of a black matte coolness, kind of a modernity, and also a kind of a sharpness as well. So when you say about dynamic tension, you imagine, well, the Santos in steel or the Santos Dumont is a little more elegant, but this one has a kind of a sporty look, but a sporty night type and a very, very, very sharp in this case. But it has roundness as well, so it's not too aggressive. It's sharp and not aggressive.
That's amazing. And I just realized, so that actually it's a rubber strap that emulates the links of the famous Santos bracelet, with even to have the screws as well. I think that's amazing. So, okay, that's really cool. I love that. And then let's go from there to another watch that is probably one of the most famous watches of all time, which is the famous Cartier Pasha. What created for, as the story goes, for the Pasha of Marrakesh. It's sometime in the 30s. 1933 has been the date that's been given to me. He was a gentleman that liked to have a fun, kind of sporty life, so he wanted a watch that was water resistant. And then it was a watch that was kind of revived in the 80s, 1985, by Cartier, with a little bit of help from one of the world's most famous watch designers, Gerald Genta, as well. And you have brought this beautiful watch back as well. Please tell us about why you decided to bring back the Pasha.
So as I said earlier, we have been for the past 4 years systematically revisiting all the beautiful shape, and it was also there was many questions. So when is the Pasha coming? And they say, be patient. We bring them one at a time, and they start to revisit our icons and to be incredibly privileged to have so many beautiful shapes and iconic shapes in there. It came from a view on the market that in some way the market had gone to an inflation of novelties, every single brand bringing something new every year. But after a while, of course, things looked about the same. So when the novelties look déjà vu, at some point you think, so why bother in some way? So we said, why should we continue to do that? And Cartier was doing the same, bringing a new shape basically every year, every other year, as a main part of the collection. We said, but we have so beautiful shapes that have been kind of dormant. And so by coming with the Panthère and with the Santos and with the Baignoire, and then and then Santos with also the Santos Dumont. And then when it came to some part of the tank, like the tank centré and tank asymmetric, we said, we have so many. They're so beautiful. Just try to find which one can be the most beautiful of them and bring back them to life. And so it was high time to bring back the Pasha. And there had been many, many versions of Pasha, from the Pasha 42, the Pasha Golf, the Pasha Grid, the Miss Pasha, the Pasha C Timer, the Pasha C. So out of this family, which one could embody them all? And there's been and we had a fantastic work with the studio where we had basically put them all on the table. This is all the Pasha that have been made.
Wow.
And many. And then say, which one do we think now do not have the right proportions? And we excluded some. And then there were some remaining, and say, from which one should we restart? And then a consensus came on this one, which can be added on the 41 or 35 millimeters, but basically something coming close to the old Pasha 42, very pure and simple, with the Arabic numeral, the special crown, with the kind of the round and the square, and this tension by itself. And that's it. And when we have shown it, people say, this is the Pasha, for sure. And so we think we have identified the one that can symbolize them all. But what do you think?
I love it, and it reminds me of something that Jean-Louis Dumas used to say, the gentleman that used to be the CEO of Hermes, where he described, and I think, remember when I interviewed his son Pierre Alexis, he said the same thing as well. When I asked, what do you create? He said, we like to create things things that have a sense of necessariness, right? That means that there's a
I
rationale
love
for
that.
why they exist. And it's true, because I'm a big fan of the Pasha, and there have been so many different versions, from the C timer with the rotating bezel to the one with the grid, to even the early perpetual calendars that came in both quartz and automatic, which I
Yes.
think are such cool watches. And even there, I think there was even a minute repeater version of that, you know? So what I love about what you've created here, and what you created last year when you launched the Santos as well, was that you've got everything there that is essential. There is a sense of necessariness to this watch because there's a period to it, and it's a wonderful foundation from which to start. So I think that, bravo, you absolutely got it. You know, and I love it both in steel. We can show it also in gold as well, in yellow gold, which is also a very beautiful execution.
I think both of them work very well.
I do too. And then and I love the idea that you have all of these pieces in your repertoire as well, and you're able to kind of, yeah, that's also magnificent. And I love that Cartier has continued to use yellow gold as well, because
Yes.
it's coming back, but you really have given it a great sense of continuity throughout your watches, even when there were certain trends. But I guess you've never really kind of followed them. You've been aware of them, but you make what you make.
I'm glad you like this, Pasha, because so far the reception has been really good. And
Amazing.
so I guess for those who want them through, and in your readers and watchers, I think they will have to be on the waiting list quite quickly, because
That's great.
it will go very quickly.
But that's great, and I think that's also, it's a very nice thing to have. When people kind of emerge from this period, as they surely will, there's going to be a sense of optimism. There's probably going to be a sense of wanting to sort of celebrate, of course, with caution, because everyone's been to some degree affected economically. But when you think about what is it that you want to purchase an icon. You want to purchase something that is timeless, that is an icon, maybe a thing you always dreamed about. And now you've brought it back with both the Santos and certainly with the Pasha as well, and obviously in the limited edition watches too.
And also when we reinvent, a watch like we did for the Santos and the same for the Pasha, we try also to increase the tangible value as well. Meaning having two interchangeable straps, one in steel, one in leather, to have also movement with a longer lifetime, because having maybe some movement improvements and something about anti-magnetism, now they can last much longer. So we have extended guarantee on them. So they're the part where both, for the part of having an icon that can be worn very long, and on the other side, something that the timeless beauty, but also the value for money that everyone is looking for. So things can go together. You don't have to pay a surprise for a highest design. We say now on the contrary, the design should have tangible value that makes it even looking at quote unquote affordable for what it is. And that's what we have been working on with a very good reception for our clients. So additional services and additional functions at the same time. And especially these interchangeable straps with very smart, easy link, make it, especially in climate when it's going to be warm and humid, you can wear a steel version or a metal version. And then when you want to have something more dressy, you can change it for a strap in leather. It works very well, and it makes it different and the same. So
amazing. Can we pull up also the skeletonized version? And then after that, I want to look at the two.
I love that one.
It's really cool. It's really cool. And again, it's a wonderful way. I know that at some point when you first moved into in-house movements, you started to work on
Look at this. Oof.
But, and again, the dynamic tension, as you were talking about, between the square and the round, with this chapter ring, which is also part of the base plate of the watch, basically, is so cool. It's really great.
The skeleton type of movement works super well on the tank Asymmetric, but it takes a kind of a different image in there, because here it's more using the round and square, so it makes even more Pasha. So it's so much of a graphic and architecture here.
It's amazing, by removing sort of the dial and removing so much material and creating this transparency, you're almost left with just really just the most essential. Yes. Yeah, it's so cool. I love it. And then can we take a look at one of the tourbillon versions, maybe the fully gem set one? And of course, if you would wish to be even more celebratory, you could also have the Pasha with this incredible iconography, also in a flying tourbillon form as well. And again, really with a wonderful integration of technique to complement also the aesthetics. Wow, that's great. That's awesome. That's super cool. And then, Cyrille, can we also talk about the smaller size version, the 35 as well?
Yes. And so there was we had a question on whether when we go for the different sizes, whether we should come to only one original design in different sizes or different design. And eventually we came to the same design. We say it's the same shape of Pasha that will be then in declination with different sizes. Then will in fact make the emphasis on the kind of a roundness, some more femininity. When it comes to just bigger size, you would see more the square and masculine part. So that's where the part where the dynamic tension in fact expresses very well by having basically the same design that when it comes to the smaller version looks softer in some way. And then when we put some diamonds on it, it works super well as well. So the something round, even rounder, even different for design for the smaller size, but we ended up with just one. And the version that we have with diamond is one with a certi vibrant, so that when you move your wrist, you can have a shivers. It's just so poetic and so beautiful.
That's cool. That's great.
It's really nice. I don't know if you have seen some certi vibrant and other watches, but this one on the dial, it just follows you. So it kind of it's very mysterious and it's very poetic.
How extraordinary. I forget that, yes, exactly. I think the last time I saw watches using this technique where the diamonds kind of shiver was from one of your watches as well, which actually brings us really nicely into métier d'art, 2 round watches, ronde watches, one with in 36 mm in filigree enamel with a panther motif. And maybe we'll start with that in both in 30-piece limited editions. But important for you also, you know, I think it's so important to keep these wonderful métiers, these incredibly human arts alive. And I know that you've been one of the greatest champions of it. Please explain to me why it's important to you.
Well, it's important in several aspects. First, as you say, when you say Cartier is seeing beauty wherever it may be, and when you have this very small things of a watch dial, or of course when it comes to jewelry. So what can we include in there? So and there are beautiful know-hows and métier that can fit very well, whether it's marqueterie with a straw or with wood or with stones, or then champ levé, cloisonné, animal, and many things combined together can make so beautiful shapes and design. So that by exploring that, it's kind of exploring the creativity in the constraint of having a very small dial. And the second part is when you want to transmit the know-how on this métier d'art, on this artisan, then if you constantly bring something, then you help them to continue their work, to transmit to the new generation, and to have them stay alive. Because otherwise there is a risk, of course, with a modern industrialized time, that the beautiful know-how and savoir-faire of many artisans might disappear. So it's both a question of preservation, transmission, and exploration at the same time. And so far with what has been done in the Cartier d'art for the past 20 years, there have been some beautiful pieces in many different knowledge and many different savoir-faire in there.
Yes, the 42 mm straw and gold marqueterie watch, because I think you referred earlier to marqueterie. And again,
yes.
Absolutely ravishing. And just the way in which it's executed, the graphics, the artistry of it, even the pose of the head is just so dynamic. It's so wonderful. That's great. So, Cyrille, you are a maison that's very famous for watches, but also very famous for bracelets as well, as we discussed in 1969, which is the year of my birth. You created Juste un Clou. But now you have a watch that is in some ways kind of a bracelet and a watch, the maison.
Yes.
Please tell us a little about the inspiration behind this.
Well, in this case, the creative brief, for we say, can we have something where we start from equally from the watch and from the maillot and the links. Usually, you tend to start the watch by the case, by the bezel, how it looks, and then you can try to find out what kind of bracelet can fit with it. In this case, can we make the entire design in one, and something that would have some inspiration coming from the Panther link, but something twisted and different, and again having the dynamic tension. So the part where there's a design, both in a bracelet, and then the case would, in some way, mingle or kind of become integrated in this design of the link. And that's the result came in there. And when you talk about dynamic tension, it's there. It's kind of bold. It's at the same time, it's soft. When you wear it, it's so soft and pleasant. And it has this both femininity. It has a very highly jewelry touch, so it's a bijou, and at the same time, it's really a watch. So that's why it makes it also different from anything we have made so far and what you can see generally outside, because it's an integrated bracelet and watch all in one. We have seen also in the design some version of only a bracelet. It's also beautiful. It can a very kind of interesting prospect for the future. But the strength of that is the integration of the links, how the links are made and twisted, and what it can say also about people now live different lives. They can have their own sense of normality, and especially in a period where we are now in confinement, where it changes our values, whether what we used to do to say when you care for people, you go and greet them. Now, if you want to have a respect for people who may be fragile, the signs of gratitude or things not to go and not see them, but just send some digital messages. So we had made for this Watches and Wonder, the theme of unexpected encounters. And I say at a period where we cannot encounter anyone, unexpected encounters only through digital is something that has very, very strong resonance. So this watch in some way showing that you can move from one shape to another, from one place to another. It's a kind of a transitional watch from something you don't expect. In some way, it's kind of coming to a time where it's absolutely relevant to have it now. And if you look at the shape of the bracelet and the links, it twists from some place to another one. So we also have now a very distorted perception of time when everyone is in standstill. The world has stopped and doesn't know how it can reopen to breathe. When you see what this shape takes you up, it takes you from some place to another one, it distorts your perception, and it takes you somewhere which is unknown, which is perfectly what we're facing now. So it's a very symbolic watch. Of course, it was designed a few months ago when no one knew what would happen. It tends to be such a nice symbol of what we are facing, right?
Incredible. You mentioned something very poignant and resonates very much, I'm sure, with everyone, is that to a large extent we're living our lives in front of screens, so we are socializing, exercising, we're working in front of screens. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you were one of the first luxury maisons to really pioneer the digitization of, I think you've even launched some of your watches online with, example, in collaboration with Net-a-Porter, as well. So for you, do you feel as if that this period that we will undergo will also bring about some further acceleration to this change, or do you feel as if there will still be a balance?
Well, I think for this trend has started before, and we see a clear acceleration, and it will continue. And for a period where, anyway, even after deconfinement, there will be for a few months social distancing. Then you will have to do many, many more things from home, and you have to do many more things from your computer screen or your telephone or iPhone. So this trend was already there. We just kind of get new momentum, and everyone will try to adjust to that and give offers. Then it will just accelerate this movement. This being said, when people are in confinement for a long time, they're really looking forward to meet people in real. Looking forward to go to places, to restaurants and shopping mall and things. And I think this will also regain. But then to say, not just to kill time, but to say, this is something important in that. I guess we gain the value of meeting people, that we are a social animal, that we need each other physically and not only through a computer screen. Same thing when you see beautiful thing on a screen, you want to touch them. When you see that watch, the maison, you want to wear it. It's how comfortable is it? And that's a part where you need to have a physical contact. When it comes to watch and jewelry, you need to wear it to know if it suits you and whether you want to be part of you. So the two things I think will combine to have increased momentum for getting information, for searching, for getting news like we do today. We can do things perfectly well on a digital conference. And it's very nice to see you, and I can see you in your interior, and it makes a very, very personalized version of you. It's not something abstract, it's really something interesting that we would not have done before, and so maybe before meeting each other in the Watches and Wonder in Geneva. But on the other time, there will be, again, a need to come and experience something in real. What I think also that is happening now, interestingly, that there was a trend for people going out and taking selfies of themselves and sending that to their friend. And so that's what they would find cool in life. But now when they have to celebrate something and say, either for themselves, what do I really care for? What can last? Or what do I, if I want to express my love or to someone else, what do I do? You cannot send a selfie of yourself in your salon every day. So you have to buy something or offer something that can last, it can express a tangible value. So we see a return to things like watches and jewelry because they go through time and it can give them and as a tangible sign of what you care for. So I think we'll come back in some way to something which is luxury of things of tangible values, not only of impulse, and not only of just showing that you're somewhere, because now people will be most of the time at home, but showing who you care for and what has tangible value.
Cyrille,
Somehow, which is an acceleration of some trend and somehow return to something more tangible values. The two things together.
I totally agree with you. I think that there's something very nice about the fundamental ethics of jewelry and mechanical watch or watches in general, especially those that are created by you, as they endure forever. There's a perenniality to them and there's a permanence. And I think that that's going to really affect people in a very emotional way when they come out of this. I would love to thank you very much. We mentioned the 30s, a time of turmoil, and how Cartier combated this with its creativity. And I think that you have demonstrated, I know this was certainly not the plan when you first started making these watches, but how uplifting it can be to see beautiful watches expressed by a gentleman who's so articulate and has such great understanding of what consumers lies in the consumer's desires and hearts. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I wish you a wonderful day.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye, Cyrille. Thank you.
Okay. And I can see that your shoes in your back are longing for going out with you.
That's the only place you're walking to right now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.